Welcome, Stephen, to the Sales Sounding Board. Would you please introduce yourself to the guests and say a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Chandler. I am a life coach and business mentor, and I've been doing that for several years, advertising agency and client side for about 25 or 30 years. I originally trained as a pilot, unbelievably, given that my eyesight is now quite shocking, with the Royal Air Force and British Airways, and then had a very fortuitous meeting with a chap called Miles Young, who at the time was chief exec of Ogilvy and Mather Direct London. He ended up as global chief exec, so I got a bit lucky. And to cut a long story short, got a job at Ogilvy in the client service department, worked my way through that, moved through some network agencies, running clients from an account management point of view like BT and Shell and the Cambridge University, running other clients like Alliance and Leicester and British Airways. And then eventually, following my father's advice to not work for corporates and work for yourself, I indeed started my own companies, advertising agencies and one gaming company, 4 advertising agencies and one gaming company, which I managed and successfully exited. And that led me from the less arguably cutthroat and ruthless world of pure advertising and marketing into my current diversion of life coaching and mentoring. And I live in Southeast London with my wife and my, believe it or not, for an old guy like me, my 5.5-month-old young daughter. And I aspire, and I will fail, to be a pop star.
Well, that's we've covered a lot of ground there, and obviously a lot of history and experience. You obviously now concentrating on life coach business. How obviously a lot has changed because of COVID-19, and we're all now talking hopefully post-COVID and how the world will now move forward. Do you feel that some things will change and some will stay the same?
I listened to a really interesting webinar by a chap called Mark Ritson, who's quite a famous marketing guru. And he has been, at least in the marketing sphere, he doesn't profess to know about everything, at least in the marketing sphere and the sales sphere to an extent. He said, everybody's saying everything's going to change. And actually, with slow incremental turning back to whatever new normal will be, it will be remarkable actually how many things don't change. And when planning forward strategically, and this is kind of where I put all 3 hats on as a coach and a mentor and a marketing guy, it's more valuable actually to consider the things that won't change and try and maximize and leverage that knowledge and understanding rather than think, oh, what will change? Where is my gap there? Where is my opportunity there? Because as we know, people are quite resistant to change. And although we've, I think, now learned that we're more adaptable than we thought, with some particular examples where that's not the case, we're still resistant to change. We want to get back to a normality. Saturday night in Soho is a very good example, not a great example, but a telling example on the 4th of July. I don't want to sit on the fence, but some things will change and some things will absolutely stay the same in essence.
Yes, I'm certainly in your camp. Some of what has happened, we would have got there anyway. Mm-hmm. We would have changed to more virtual meetings. Yes. The days of running around, wasting, I mean, I dare to think how many thousands of hours I've wasted traveling to a meeting for an hour when I could just go click and achieve exactly the same on Zoom. That face-to-face, I believe, will change. We may have a blended mix, some virtual, some face-to-face. But my gut feeling is most of business and the way we live, sell, and work together will remain pretty much constant. We still have products, services to sell, how they're marketed. I don't see the marketing side. I mean, the marketing industry has changed because of the digital age.
Yeah.
But I don't see that really changing.
I think the only exception would be the, at least for now, and I think probably residually in the future, the live experience part of the marketing industry. Large gatherings of people to experientially get under the skin of a brand and really look, see it, smell it, touch it, feel it. And they're thinking of pivoting, they're thinking of reskilling, they're thinking of going back to basics, understanding the skill set and doing something utterly different, which maximizes the opportunity of that skill set. But yeah, I think generally speaking, the nuts and bolts stay the same. It's just how we execute.
Yes. Though I think we've spoken underneath it all, whatever is created, thought about, developed, manufactured, somebody has to sell it, which is a process of change. As a mentor and coach, and you are creating change, because that's what it's fundamentally about. And we have this inbuilt human dislike of change. And I think, I'm not sure whether the older we get, we hate it more, or it's just that we're harder to adapt to it.
That brings to mind a quote, and shapely, I can't remember his name, a very famous, long-standing All Black Rugby Union coach. And I was privileged, and I don't quite know how I got invited, because it was all pro and ex-pro Kiwi and Pacific Island rugby players. And this guy was speaking on this webinar. And I will misquote him, but you'll get the sense. He said, "We only live two lives. Our first, and then we live our second when we realize we only have one life." And it's just so poignant. We spend so much of our time thinking, oh, well, when this happens, when the kids leave, when I get that bonus, this, that. No, as John Lennon said, life is what's happening when you're making other plans. And we have to remember we have one life.
Yes. Yes, I think it's very true. I mean, you have certain processes you use with your clients. Would you like to share those on the show?
Yeah, I can give you a broad idea of certainly from the coaching and mentoring point of view. The fundamentals of coaching, as you know, and probably the audience knows, is I do not advise. I ask open-ended, non-directive questions, very specifically crafted questions. And funnily enough, we'll talk about questions quite a lot as we go through the rest of this podcast. The questions are there to help the client understand, acknowledge, seek, and reveal the answers from within. As a mentor, and with 30 odd years of experience, I do give advice when I have knowledge in that area, or when I have transferable knowledge in certain areas. And so a lot of people that know about coaching will have heard of the Wheel of Life, which dates back years and years and years, and has been sort of updated, and you can get it on your app, and it's a planning tool. And at the most basic sense, it's a planning tool from which we lead on to many, many, many other things. And it's funny, I was reviewing my my Dropbox, my shared Dropbox with my fellow coaches, and the resources we've got along the lines of the Wheel of Life, or of the value set questions, or whatever they are, it runs to about 250 resources. So from a coaching point of view, there is no one solution. Everything is bespoke. And when I work with a client, I still use a pen and paper. And I have a loose agenda, and I'm prepared to take a left and right turn during a session. But in the right-hand column, I'm jotting down notes about different resources based on the very things they're talking about. And again, we'll talk about this. It's a kind of a counseling way of reciprocating confidences. As they reveal something, I have to actively listen and then go back to them with something that's relevant to them to take them higher and higher and higher. And we meet at the top, and then we have moments of revelation well outside of the comfort zone. But I think perhaps more relevant to this broadcast, I have a sales acronym.
Right.
And I think we must acknowledge that we're all salespeople in whatever we do. Without being hard-nosed door-to-door salesmen or saleswomen, we are always having to sell something that we have to somebody else.
Yes. I
have to sell buy my free time from my wife if I want to go into a recording studio to be a wannabe pop star when I'm out for the whole day and she has to look after the baby.
Yes.
So it works at home as well. The bottom line is this is about putting the client or the customer first. And the acronym, it's quite a lengthy one.
Okay.
But the acronym is quality deftness. So superlative, ingenuity, and agility, and results.
Okay.
Quality deftness. You're smiling, Kevin.
It's a long one. I've got a history in sales, so we try and keep it simple.
Absolutely, keep it simple, stupid, right? Exactly. Yeah.
That's it.
Shall I kick it off? See where we go with
let's
it?
kick it off. This is one I've not heard, so I'm very enthusiastic to.
Well, you haven't heard it because I wrote it.
There you are. Are you allowed to share?
I am. I've only shared it with one other person over the years. So this is going out, and this is showing the crown jewels. First of all, so first letter of quality, Q for question.
Yeah.
And here I quote Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said, "If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes."
Yes.
And this will be a strong theme throughout this whole acronym.
Yes. Yes.
Now, sorry, go on.
Yes, no. I questions are the most important thing in a sales engagement.
Absolutely. As it is indeed in a coaching and in a mentoring environment.
Yes. Yeah.
But we can ask as many questions as we like. However smart, clever, probing, intelligent, where do we go with that? The reason we ask questions is so that primarily, next letter, quality, U, we can understand and empathize. So following the response to our questions, we then immediately put ourselves in the shoes of the person we're talking to. And importantly, we have to understand the empathizing point. We have to understand how they feel.
Yes.
We need to identify what they think they want. And then we move that one step on. And we realize and hopefully understand and empathize with what they really need. And wants are very different from needs.
Yeah.
The other thing we do following good questioning is to actively listen and then feedback. The third letter of quality, A. Now,
yeah.
Active listening is a definite skill. And so many people don't do it. My father, bless him, rest in peace, was a really smart man. And he couldn't help but break the cardinal rule of non-active listening, which is to just say the very next thing that was on his mind. He's so keen to get it out. He's probably very enthusiastic about a conversation. What he didn't do was take in what somebody had just said, process it for a heartbeat, and then that point again about reciprocating confidences. Come back with something directly relevant to what he's heard that is still about him, ideally about the person that he's talking to, but moving it up the ladder. We have 2 ears and just one mouth for a reason, and you and I have discussed this before.
Yes. And
another acronym I like is WAIT, W-A-I-T, which stands for Why Am I Talking?
Yes. Yes, I use that one quite often.
Silence unnerves people, but silence is a very powerful thing.
Yes.
And if we stop talking, we can get a lot from other people.
Yes, and I certainly, from a sales, use of silence was around in the sales techniques of the 80s to apply pressure to the other person. That's gone because the information in those days was held by the salesperson. That's gone. The prospect client now holds it. Therefore, that no longer works. But I certainly see people trying to use it, and or by deliberately or mistakenly, and that makes them fall foul. So
Oh,
yes,
a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing.
yes, and I think the one that always I've obviously my experience around active listening is the competitiveness of the other person. I often say, because of my background, the challenge with a meeting of two salespeople, and they both get caught up in seeing who can pee up the wall the highest.
It's the same in advertising. I think. Well, no, I belong to enough on social platforms to do with coaching. It's kind of the same in coaching. I think it's probably the same in most professions.
Yes, and the reality is the power is with those that listen.
Absolutely. The most interesting people at dinner parties are the ones that ask questions and don't say anything.
Yes.
They're the ones that are always asked back.
Yes.
And they're the ones that give least, but actually they're giving everybody else what they love, which is to talk about themselves.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So next letter, L.
L. So, okay, we've questioned, we've understood, we've empathized, we've listened, we've fed back. Just to finish off on actively listen feedback, you do need to play back what you hear and not necessarily what was said. So perhaps frame it in a way that says, okay, thank you. What I'm hearing is, it sounds a bit therapist-like, but it's very important to qualify that for what comes next.
Yes.
L. Thank you, Kevin. L is learn. And one of my favorite phrases that I bang on about to my clients is, we never win or lose. We only win or learn. Because things need to keep moving forwards in a positive direction. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up again. Yes. And the learning process applies to everybody. Leaders, as much as it is people at the beginning of their career, we have to keep learning. And a sales opportunity is another opportunity to learn throughout the process. Even if you get a no, if I'm pitching to a prospect, I would rather get, well, I'd obviously rather get a yes, but I'd rather get a no than a maybe. Because a maybe is, oh, teasing me, dangling a carrot, maybe a week or a month down the line. If this happens, if that happens, if I get my bonus, if the kids leave home. A no gives you a really good line in the sand to say, great, thank you. Thank you for your frankness. Why not?
Yes.
And if you learn, you can move on.
Yes.
I, where are we at? Quality. Interrogate and ask why. So we need to clarify here, without over-egging the pudding, you need to keep asking why. And this was a technique I learned when I was writing creative briefs under people like Steve Harrison and Rory Sutherland. There's this section of creative brief, again, teaching people to suck eggs called a proposition, which is the single-minded promise, the uniqueness. And if you wrote a proposition and asked the question why, and there was a further answer, you hadn't got to the core distilled proposition yet. So you keep asking why, and you get a deeper answer, and you get a deeper answer, and then you eventually get the real answer.
Yes, it's one many miss. I ran a business, well, a number of businesses, and of course I had a budget, and I used to get regular phone calls from those selling advertising. My pat answer was, I've spent this year's budget. Of probably 100 calls, I got 0. When does it start and when does it end? And if it was something good enough, would that stop you actually finding money from somewhere else in a different budget? I found that it was a fascinating period of nobody asked why.
I think they're scared of success.
Yeah, I
think they know that it's there, and it's outside of my comfort zone because it might lead me down a rabbit hole of a conversation that's a bit too deep. I want a simple solution to my product or service, please. Just buy it or don't.
Yes.
Madness.
Yes, I just, that was one I wanted to share because that sort of fits in with not asking the why. because it just cut. That was it. End of conversation. So
they're doing it by numbers, aren't they? Not by quality or.
And I was realistic. As a small business owner, I didn't have set budgets. I had what cash I had, and it was just. But that's.
And we all know you would have found the money if it was worth it. If the potential outcome and payoff was the margin incrementally was great.
Yes. Yes. So sorry, I stopped.
Don't worry. Where have we got up to? T, quality. Once we've established all of the above, for whatever industry you're in, this sounds like it's about advertising or manufacturing, but you need to create a tight brief.
Yes.
And you write it down in clear, simple. It's called a brief for a reason. It's supposed to be brief. You write down the clear, simple requirements and then get your customer or client to approve that document. And that is critical because, and from that, as we filter down, interrogate, and we get to the brief creation, then it goes back out again. And that's the pivot point from which, it's like the title at the top of the essay. We keep referring back to it to make sure we're on brief. That phrase, on brief. And the last part of the initial activity, which is conveniently the end of the first word, quality, is why. Your delivery, contract, and proposal. Once the brief, the scope of work effectively has been approved, you then turn that into an equally clear statement of work, signposting, proposal, scoping document that explains how you'll do it. Not the what and the theory, but the practical. We will do this on this date. Timing schedules go in there, detail ad nauseum. And again, you get the client to approve it, if I haven't already said that.
Yes, yes. They have to buy in.
At every stage. Because, this is a slightly cynical point of view, if something goes wrong, you can always say, but you approved it there. Now, we obviously have a duty of care as servants. I consider myself a servant. I serve all my clients, and I'm very proud to do the very best and to do our due diligence along the way, and not just to ignore the typos because somebody else will pick it up. No. But we need checks and balances the whole time.
Yes.
So, deftness. Funny word. The first letter of deftness is obviously D, and this stands for, perhaps obviously, but really importantly, you have to deliver. You have to actually deliver what you've promised you will, because you're getting paid. And anyway, morally, you should stick to your agreements. Yeah. Now, that may or may not go well. And this acronym system allows for both of those eventualities. The way we understand whether it's gone well or not is the next step, the E, which is evaluate. Measure how your delivery actions have, hopefully positively, affected outcomes. And that's outcomes, not outputs. There's a distinct difference. Unless you're creating widgets for a supplier that just wants 1,000 perfect widgets, and then the numbers kind of count. It is outcomes we care about.
Yes, that's what people buy, the outcome.
It's like the benefit. It's the hope in Helena Rubinstein, rather than I don't sell and manufacture makeup. I sell hope.
Yes.
I think it was
yes, the one I've heard, sort of my field, is somebody wishing to buy a 6 mil drill bit doesn't actually require a 6 mil drill bit. What they require is a 6 mil hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if I've said in the previous point about evaluating, hopefully everything will have gone positively. If not, the next letter is fixed problems quickly.
Yeah.
And this can actually work to your advantage. I read a very long time ago, and I'm ashamed I can't remember the reference, this stat, and it's probably changed over time, but you'll get the idea. If you provide good service, your client or customer will tell on average 5 people. If you provide bad service, your customer will tell 7 people. However, if you provide a service that initially fouls up, but you fix it quickly, they will tell 9 people how amazing you are. And I wrote a paper for a marketing magazine many years ago, which used this stat as the starting point. And I actually suggested that all products and services should have an inbuilt fault that could be fixed really quickly and easily, so that you maximize this 9 multiple factor.
Yes.
But I think maybe the customers would suss it out if it's the same caster wheel falling off a sofa or something like that.
Yes. I remember a printer, and he was trying to win business from a very important client in the area. So he tried all the normal methods. Everything failed. So he got quite creative, and he decided that you employ a printer, you are expecting a perfect product, perfect outcome. So what he did was produce a piece of print based on their content, turned it upside down, put spelling mistakes in it, put poor quality print quality into it, couple of errors with the fonts, printed that on side 1, and at the bottom it said in very large words in red, please turn over. He turned over on the other side, and this is the only time we will make any mistakes for you.
That's quite nice. That's a good insight into the need of the buyer. In fact, it's a very good insight into the need of the buyer. And it's charming, it's funny, but it's,
yes,
it's
it achieved that the client saw what he was trying to prove, but he got through, and that was the point.
Massive cut through.
He fixed the problem. We don't have to do this.
Yeah,
we can do it right. But
and interestingly, it's not unique to him, because it's a bit like Colgate and fluoride. Colgate said we got fluoride. Every toothpaste had fluoride, but they were the first to say it. Yeah. Any printer could have done that, but he was smart enough to have that customer insight and do it.
Yes.
Lovely. I'll remember that one. So I've got the drill bit story and I've got the printer story. I love this.
Yes. So I'm getting a lot from you, don't I? Right, okay.
So we're up to deftness. Testimonial request.
Yes.
Now, this is after you've evaluated and things have gone brilliantly, or you've evaluated and you've fixed a problem quickly. You strike while the iron is hot. When you're really loved the most, and you get a good testimonial or recommendation from your client or customer. And you can keep that forever, because you don't have to date them. Unlike awards, which you have to put the number next to, the date next to it, and they look tired if they're 20 years old. And obviously you collect them and you put them on your literature, you put them on your website, you put them on your blogs, you put them wherever you can. Because no amount of shouts as loud as a customer recommendation testimonial as to the quality, the ultimate quality of a product and service.
Yes.
And then we start looking towards the future. The next letter in DEFTNESS is N, which stands for next steps. And without being cynical, just being commercial, one should always be thinking about the upsell, the cross-sell, the repeat sale. Fundamentally, what is the authentic way forward to genuinely, as if it were your own money, further develop your customer or client's business? And I like that thought about what would you do if it was your own money? Question, and you keep saying no, then I'd change career. Go to a different product or service and sell that, because you've got to believe in it and it's got to add value.
Yes, very much so. Very, very much so. That's next steps is an interesting one for me in getting referrals, and one I share a lot of times with people, because there's as you say, there's a golden opportunity to get a referral. And in some of my processes and businesses, I've done a follow-up call face to face. And the one I always like to share to people is that I've gone to a client and checked in, everything was successfully done on time, as we said, process complete. Is there anything further going forward? But while I'm here, I always fill the question in looking for the referrals. And there's a sort of danger zone in our modern world, because I would say to people, is there anybody else you can think of that could use our services and materials, etc.? And I remember with a very nice gentleman, as I said that, out came his phone. He hit a couple of dials and just handed me the phone.
Sure.
And it was a gentleman I had. So I had this, as we say, instant reaction. Who am I talking to? And then having to do the pitch, in effect. Hello. Because the interesting one, of course, they answered the phone based on who they thought was ringing.
Thinking it was Honcho, yeah.
So I always say that the hotness of a referral can sometimes be just a little bit take you off guard.
Your horses there.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's a nice problem to have. I'd rather that than the opposite.
And it's happened a few times over the years. So I try and but obviously those are face-to-face days, and we've obviously changed. And as you say, referrals, one that certainly come into my remit is there's two sides to it. People do personal referrals, photo, name, person, and then there are organizations which use brand logos.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
now, don't see a great value in a brand logo, because it doesn't really saying I've done work with Coca-Cola. What does that mean? Whereas if I've got John Jones who said, I've achieved this with this person. What's your sort of take on that?
I generally speaking agree with you, but I will caveat that and say my opinion and attitude is very clearly demarcated. The majority of my clients are private one-to-one clients. About a third of my clients are corporates. And that tends to be in the main group sessions with a couple of exec lead coaching within it. With the private one-to-one clients, and a lot of the nature, it's important that one understands this as well, a lot of the nature of what I do is confidential, both ways. And I must protect that and honor that. So you can see on my website, actually, under the what others say about me section, I put initials and a loose job title next to the testimonials I have. Most of my clients are very happy for me to talk about the fact that I coach them, but I still maintain the confidentiality to that degree. If, however, we're talking about a corporate account, then I do name the names of the brands I work for. But I'll get a testimonial from an individual who is the commissioning manager or the division head. So in the general blurb, I'll say, I work for this software company, this advertising agency. And then in the testimonial section, it'll say initials and title. So it gives a little hint.
Yeah, so because
of course I don't lie. That's very important. I don't lie. Testimonials, I think, I won't name the site, but there is one particular site, not a coaching site, this is a holiday and leisure site. And it was notorious, not their fault, by the way, before we get any lawyer letters, for having fake reviews. And of course, it's entirely possible to do that. But I couldn't live with myself, and it's hardly the thing a coach who believes in authenticity should do, is it?
Yes, I certainly, a bit like you, I've got clients that their organisation don't wish to be not protected. They just need to keep a level of exposure.
Absolutely.
So I think that, and also certain corporates, because if you're into corporate world, it's so huge, then it can. But I think a lot of people, especially around so, don't see the value in a referral. We are in a world now, we're very risk adverse. in all nature. You know, Amazon's site now is just full of personal, you know, I get bombarded. Can I give a review of a product I bought? It's constantly in our world now. We are becoming risk adverse. We like to have the security of someone who's done it before.
Trusted to you.
Yes.
Ideally. Trusted to oneself. Yeah. I must admit, I don't advertise or market myself. I do some events, and I don't sell at the events at all. It's not my style. Again, it's the thing about being a comedian, and don't tell me a comedian, tell me a joke, let me decide whether I'm funny. And the vast majority of my work comes through referrals and recommendations. There's one particular individual, and if you sort of mind mapped how she has led to so many things, it's quite extraordinary. She's on the loyalty scheme, let's put it that way.
Yes, I think that's true. I think the referral part is that people miss out on. You know, we have a process now a lot with employment coming. They talk about onboarding.
Yeah.
Which is a crucial part, which I believe fits in here, that making sure we're getting the right outcomes. But that's just one stage within an employment cycle.
Absolutely.
So, next letter.
What have we got there, Kevin? Is it E?
Yes.
E. E stands for entertain. And I'm not talking about golf courses and strip bars.
Right.
Those days are long gone. I vaguely remember them. I'm old, but I'm not that old. Ideally, you want to create a working environment and partnership for your clients so that environment and that feelings are very important. I think it was Maya Angelou that said, it's not what you say that people remember. It's not even what you do that people remember. It's how you make them feel that they remember.
Oh, most definitely.
So you need your clients to truly look forward, genuinely look forward to the next call, the next meeting, the next proposal, the next message from you. Things to send them. The Royal Mail or Whistle or other mail providers who are available unexpectedly to achieve that.
So keeping engagement within that person. So postcards, letter,
absolutely,
a text, something to keep them engaged.
Yeah, and always and include their family. Because if in the course of my conversation with my clients, you know, they may say, "Oh yeah, I've got to sort out so and so," and then my clients and they're saying, "I hope Johnny's having a lovely day." And I'm not faking it. I genuinely feel it because I know what it's like on the other end of that. I like people who have got a good memory about stuff about me because it proves that they cared.
Yes.
It's just it's basic stuff. And it isn't faking it. It's not having a database of addresses and, you know, and key dates. It's just caring. And I would have put caring in quality deftness, but there's not a C.
I was going to say, it doesn't really work. So, okay.
Penultimate, sustain, S for sustain. If you're doing all this well, and by all accounts successfully, keep it up. Do not drop the ball. Do not rest on your laurels. Do not think that egg in your basket is going to stay there forever. It could easily be whipped away. There could be a global pandemic virus coming around, and all of a sudden you haven't got that client anymore.
Yes. Assume
nothing. You kind of. I think it was Martin Sorrell that said he worried about the small stuff. He worried about the pennies because if you get those right, the rest generally falls into place. It's incredibly important to shepherd and keep your sheepdog on the game.
Yes, it's something I often talk about, the Pareto 80-20 rule. Absolutely. And the one that's always falls in business is that 80% generally of the revenue of a company comes out of just 20% of its customer base. Mm-hmm. And I talk to companies, I'm just about to put another article on LinkedIn, where they spend a lot of time prospecting out in the wilderness. And in fact, they've got 80% of their potential clients they already know, they do have a connection with, all the processes are in place and they ignore them.
Yeah, exactly. It's mad.
Yeah.
It's mad. This brings to mind another anecdote I heard about the shoe manufacturer that went out to a Papua New Guinean island. 2 shoe manufacturers went out with 2 separate salesmen. The first one goes out, sends a telegram back to his boss saying, "No, we haven't got a chance. No chance. They don't wear shoes out here." Second salesman goes out, "We got a huge opportunity. No one wears shoes yet."
Yes.
There's your 80-20 in practice.
Yeah, and the glass
99.
And is the glass full or half empty?
Yeah, exactly.
Half full or half empty. It is a perception people perceive, but I'm always that when I talk to companies and go, hang on a minute, you've got 80% of these people.
Yeah.
When did you last have a conversation with them?
Exactly. When did you learn something new from them? How are they developing a product? Customer co-creation. One other thing I do is I sit on the creative committee of the Data and Marketing Association. And I hope this is not embargoed. I'm sure it's not. We have a creativity in the UK initiative and campaign launching. And this whole thing that we're talking about is trust. And it's also about learning and co-creation with the creativity of the consumer, not the brands or the advertising agencies. What's creativity mean in practical terms to the consumer? A bit like user-generated content, but on a product and service basis. That's where we're going. That's where we're going.
Yes, I think certainly in the sales, because we've commoditized huge swathes of the business market, whether it's B2B or B2C, we've also lost the order taking roles. So what you're left with in sales is a very difficult role, which has to be built around trust. You have to be a trusted advisor. You have to be able to bring market knowledge, what's happening in the marketplace to those. Because I think people, sit down with a buyer and believe that he knows everything that's going on. No, he hasn't. He's got his role. He's doing his role. That doesn't mean he's aware of what's going on out there. That's part of that sales role now, has to bring that market knowledge in, know what the competitors are doing, know what's happening out there, and bring that into that what I call trusted advisor role. And I think that fits in there with sustainability. Very few are one-off sales anymore. A lot of it is repeat, because that's the wealth of business.
It has to be consultative. It can't be thought of in a short-term gain, which suggests that we should be thinking in the medium to long term all the time. But of course, New York always sends down those quarterly targets. Always. The last one, S, DEFTNESS, satisfaction and experience forever. This leads on from sustain. But it's about mindset. It's about a point I made earlier about being a servant. Ensure that you have a service mindset with passion, with interest, with loyalty, not kowtowing, not being a servant, but being a servant to serve that customer or client, and inject every customer touch point with. That's kind of an overarching mindset, which perhaps sums up the whole essence of quality deafness.
Passion. Could you go?
Interest and loyalty.
Interest and loyalty.
You can put it the other way around, and you can make it loyalty, interest, and passion, and call it LIP.
Yeah.
Another acronym.
Yeah.
We're going all out on acronyms today.
No, it's very relevant, because I come from a world where acronyms are important because it keeps people grounding. And grounded in that process. Poor planning promotes poor performance. And that you can tell. And I always thought that was around sales, and actually that goes across every aspect of it.
Well, it's armed forces originally, isn't it?
Yes. KISS, keep it simple, salesman or stupid, whichever. But acronyms, I believe, are about keeping you grounded in that moment.
Yeah.
And a bit like I say, that the meeting of two salespeople, the challenge is the competitiveness to see who can be up the wall the highest. That's a problem. The one I would like to sort of share with you and get your feedback on, I'm just aware of sort of time, but I'll feed this back. When I started working in counselling and psychotherapy, I started in counselling and I sat down after I was sort of looking at moving to the psychotherapy model. And I sat down with a very experienced and knowledgeable tutor of psychotherapy and said, okay, so what's the difference? What is the difference? So, well, I'll give you this vision. And okay, so you and the client, you're sat in a room. You ask the client what they need to happen, how they can move forward in their life. So are we talking about perhaps redecorating the room, changing some of the furniture, changing the positions of the chairs, etc.? Or are we talking about sitting in this room, not only redecorating, perhaps moving some items of furniture around, but perhaps creating a doorway into another room?
Right.
And that I took, and that's one I've used, because that really, for me, always summed up. There are two options. Counselling, if a redecoration was what was required and that would allow them to live and move forward, then fine. But occasionally you have to do a structural change. And that's where I feel there is an overlap. I talk to you and other business coaches, and that's the one I get, because none of us like change, but you and I cannot make someone change. They have to drive that change from them.
Absolutely. And without sounding mercenary about it, I won't take a client that isn't prepared to make a significant change to their life right now. Not that I'm arrogant or, looking for an easy way. It's a waste of everybody's time and money. It's a waste of everybody's time and money. And I don't want to fail. And I know if they don't have the right incoming attitude, they won't have an outgoing attitude that's going to take them where they want and need to go.
I'll share just one last one with you, and then I'll come to the sort of last thoughts.
Okay.
I was told a story by a very experienced psychotherapist who had sat down with a client for a number of weeks, and the client had always brought to the sessions everything that was wrong with everybody else in her world or his world. Then one day, a number of sessions on, the client came in, sat down in the chair, very quiet, and then the therapist waited for them to say, and so you've not said anything. What would you like to bring to the room? And the person said, everything I've told you for all these weeks has been not true. All the problems in my life I've created. And the therapist, and so?
Yeah, right. Let me make sure I get this. That's the point, right? That's the point. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's phenomenally powerful.
Yes. That's why psychotherapy had appeal to me. So obviously, Stephen, thank you for that great share. I now have a lot about quality deafness. That's a very powerful acronym. As we sort of come to an end, have you got sort of 3 things you would like to share with the guests, takeouts from this session? Key takeouts?
Yeah, I do. I think I do.
Okay, so here's my 3 key takeouts. The first is about questions. We've talked about questions a lot. The right questions are infinitely more valuable than the right answers. Second takeout is in 2 parts. I'm going to cheat, I'm afraid. The first part is keep asking why until you run out of answers. And only then will you have arrived at the answer. And the second part is that silence is powerful. The space between the words. And more of it, whilst sometimes uncomfortable, will unlock the truth beneath. And lastly, it's this point again about serving and being prepared to serve, and in a non-kowtowing, deferential way, thinking about life in service. And I think as a general point, especially in the current times, we have to serve our fellow man and woman, and we have to be kind. In fact, cheating again, my one big key takeout is to spread kindness.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's been great to have you on the show. Hopefully we'll do something like this again in the future.
Thanks very much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.